In today's review, we'll take a closer look at the selection of metallic paints. Especially if you are a beginner and have just picked up your first airbrush, finding the right metal shade for your specific project can be quite a challenge. Personally, I build mostly aircraft models where metallics often come into play on the engine exhaust, but of course, there are also aircraft finished entirely in bare metal, requiring a bit more finesse and special treatment. Those among you who prefer building cars will know exactly what I mean, though I leave that subject aside for today because I'm no expert in building these kind of subjects. Instead, I'll be focusing on metallic paints from AK Interactive, Armomic, Tamiya, Mr. Paint, Revell, Mr. Color, Vallejo, Alclad II and Gaahleri, which kindly provided their paints for testing in this video. For each of these brands, I'll be giving a score from 1 to 10, along with my thoughts on how well the paint performs with a brush, keeping in mind of course that metallics generally show their full potential when applied with an airbrush. At the end of the video, I also show you a few shades from my personal favorite brands. As always with reviews like this, keep in mind that everything you hear is purely subjective, just my own impression and preferences based on testing. Of course, I can't possibly cover every brand and every metallic shade out there, so I'd be pleased if you shared your own experiences and favorite manufacturers in the comments below. Now then, let's begin the review. Preparing the surface with a primer is one of the most important steps when working with metallic paints. For acrylics, I'm using this glossy primer from Gaahleri. It's applied with an airbrush, the very same one I've tested in a separated video, which you can find linked in the top right corner. For this application, I'm using a 0.5mm needle, the same setup I'll be using for all other acrylic paints featured in this review. The first acrylic paint we are looking at comes from Armomic, in this case the shade Steel. It sprays beautiful onto our test spoon, giving a smooth and even finish. Revell's aqua color in the shade Steel comes in these rather unusual containers. The paint itself is quite thick, and to achieve a proper spray pattern with an airbrush, it needs to be thinned down a lot. And even then it proved quite difficult to get the paint flowing smoothly through the airbrush, so I had to speed up the footage a little. The finish itself is rather dull. Next up is a Steel shade from Gaahleri, a relatively new player on the market. The paint comes pre-thinned and sprays almost effortlessly as a lacquer based color. The finish is impressively smooth and delivers a truly striking metallic look. Now, let's turn our attention to Vallejo's offering from the Model Air series. This paint is a little thicker than the one from Armomic, yet it still sprays beautifully and delivers a result that's every bit as pleasing to the eye. Here we have AK Interactive's aluminium paint. This one is also a bit thick on the thicker side and needed some thinning before spraying. Unfortunately, the dropper broke, an issue I have encountered with quite a few AK paints. The end result, I'm afraid, wasn't particularly impressive either. Our final acrylic paint is silver from Tamiya, a favorite among many model builders. It offers excellent coverage and sprays on smoothly, producing a clean, consistent metallic finish. Now let's turn our attention to the lacquer based paints. These generally deliver a far more realistic metallic appearance than acrylics. The downside of course is that they are toxic and have quite a strong smell while drying, so using a proper spray booth is absolutely essential. For the primer I'm using gloss black from A-Stand, and the airbrush for this section is in Avata fitted with 0.5 needle. On the left side you can see the Lacquer primer, and on the right side the acrylic one. While I'm very pleased with Gaahlerie's primer, in fact I'd say it's the best acrylic primer on the market, nothing quite matches the gloss and depth of a Lacquer primer, as you can clearly see here. Next we'll take a look at A-Stand aluminium airframe. This paint needs to be applied in very thin layers, otherwise it tends to crack as it dries. Nevertheless, in my opinion, A-Stand offers the finest metallic finish available on the market. The result is simply flawless, virtually indiscussable from real metal. Some of you might be wondering about the connection between A-Stand and Alclad II. While the two ranges look and perform almost identically, they all actually come from two separate companies. Acrylic didn't acquire Alclad II, but rather worked with the same original manufacturer to produce its own line under the A-Stand name, using what appears to be the same formula. Here we are looking at high-speed silver from Alclad II, and just as with A-Stand, the finish is superb and remarkably close to real metal. Next we'll test Extreme Metal Polished Aluminium from AK Interactive, an enamel based paint. It offers incredible coverage and sprays on beautifully, though it does have a very strong smell while applying. On the plus side, it's easier to work with than A-Stand and still delivers an excellent convenience metallic finish. If you have been following my channel for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of Mr. Paint's products. Their metallic range is no exception. These paints spray beautifully, offer excellent coverage and are remarkably easy to handle. They are my go-to choice whenever I need to airbrush smaller metallic areas. I know that many of you are fans of the metallic paints from Mr. Color. The paint has somehow a thicker consistency and requires proper thinning before spraying, yet it performs reasonably well once applied. Personally, I'm not especially keen on the final appearance, and the coverage is, in my view, merely average. Now let's take a look at the final results. All paints were given 24 hours to dry before this comparison. We begin with acrylics. In general, acrylics metallics tend to appear a bit duller compared to lacquer based paints. Nevertheless, they remain the preferred choice for many modelers, largely because they are water-based and far less toxic to work with. In my opinion, they are an excellent option for smaller parts or limited areas, and in some cases, they still manage to deliver a surprisingly convenient metallic finish. First up, Vallejo Model Air. The paint looks excellent, though it was a bit more challenging to spray compared to Gaahleri or Acrylic. For that reason, I'm giving it a very solid 7 out of 10. Definitely one of the better paints on the table today. It can also be applied with a brush, though for that purpose I personally recommend Vallejo's model color range, which in my opinion is the finest choice for brush painting. AK Detective's color was rather disappointing. The color is poor and a slightly texture even formed on the test spoon. The overall effect isn't particularly convincing either. It might perform better with heavier thinning, but if the paint doesn't spray well through a 0.5 needle, then it's simply not a good paint in my book. Gaahleri truly surprised me. The finish is beautiful and it sprays exceptionally well with an impressively smooth surface. Still, it doesn't quite reach the natural metallic look of lacquer based paints. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10, though it came very close to an 8. The only real drawback is that it can't be applied with a brush, as the paint is simply too thin for that. Enamel mix metallic paints are quite solid overall. The finish is acceptable for an acrylic, but the coverage can sometimes be a little inconsistent, even if in that case it turned out rather well. From experience, I can also say that they brush on nicely, which is definitely a plus. I'm giving them a respectable 6 out of 10. Vallejo and Gaahleri, however, remain the stronger choices in my opinion. Revell, what can I say? As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm German, and as a young boy I used to walk through department stores picking up their model kits, because back then they were the only ones you could find on the shelves. Without Revell, I probably wouldn't be a model builder today. That, however, is about the only positive thing I can say here, because this paint is garbage, much like many of their model kits these days. I did notice that Revell has now started producing building blocks, and to be fair, they seem better than Lego, which isn't exactly difficult these days. At least there you won't run into as many fitting issues. Sadly, when it comes to scale modeling, Revell just doesn't have much of a voice anymore. 1 out of 10 for this color. Tamiya is another solid paint. I do like the way it catches the light and gives off a pleasant shine, though the coverage isn't particularly strong. It's also not the easiest paint to clean from the airbrush afterwards. Still, it's far from a bad choice. I'd give it a steady 5 out of 10, as I believe the offering from Enamel performs just a bit better. And here we have, in my opinion, the two best acrylic paints, Vallejo on the left, Gaahleri on the right. I let you decide which one you prefer. As mentioned before, if you had experience with other acrylic metallics, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Alright, now we move on to the lacquer paints. I know it's a little unfair to compare lacquers with acrylics, especially when it comes to metallic finishes. In this area, lacquer paints will simply always have the upper hand. Still, let's give the comparison a try. Now look, Mr. Color is a brand many of you hold in high regard, but I personally find the consistency of this paint rather difficult to work with. It takes quite a bit of practice to get the thinning just right, something that comes far more naturally with the other paints. The end result isn't bad by any means, yet I still prefer a few of the acrylic options over it. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10, but it came very close to a 7. Now just look at that. If that doesn't look like real metal, I don't know what does. A-Stand or Alclad II is the clear winner for me. Not only this particular shade, but the entire range stands head and shoulders above all the other metallic paints. It would easily deserve a perfect 10 out of 10, but since I often hear that applying it can be a bit tricky and requires some practice to master, I settle for a 9 out of 10. Mr. Paint, in my opinion, is truly a solid choice. The metallic effect is convincing, but what really stands out is how effortlessly it sprays and how clean the final result looks. It doesn't quite reach the level of A-Stand in terms of overall quality, yet its ease of use makes it an excellent option nonetheless. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, one of the best metallic paints on the market in my view. The same goes for AK Detective's Extreme Metal, the only enamel paint in today's test. Its coverage is outstanding, better than any of the other paints in this comparison. It did slightly attack the plastic of the test spoon, but of course we rarely spray this type of paint onto this kind of plastic. The finish itself is excellent and quite eye-catching. Even it still doesn't quite reach the level of A-Stand. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, but it came very close to a 9. Here you can see the difference of A-Stand on the left side and on the right side MRP paint. And to give you a comparison between the acrylic and lacquer paints, on the left side we have Gaahleri and on the right side we have A-Stand. And last but not least, on the left side Vallejo, Model Air, and on the right side MRP paint. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you have enjoyed this review of the various metallic paints. If you did, please consider leaving a like, it really helps out. To wrap things up, I'll now show you a few additional shades from Gaahleri, MRP and A-Stand, or Alclad II. You see the name of each paint displayed in the top left corner. And have loved to include more examples from Vallejo and AK Interactive's extreme metal range, but unfortunately the ones shown today are the only ones I currently have on hand. If you'd like to help change that and enjoy scale modeling content, feel free to subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way in helping me grow and makes it possible for me to test even more paints in the future. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy building.